Today we begin the fourth letter. This letter is about having a heart and the many layers of the heart. This letter will speak about prayer. It will speak about tzedakah, about being charitable. And today we're just going to briefly get into some of the ideas, and of course we'll continue in the forthcoming days. Quoting from Maimonides, the Alter Rebbe says, Ein Yisrael nigolen ela b'tzedakah. The Jewish people are only redeemed, redemption is brought about through tzedakah, being charitable. As the verse says in Isaiah, B'shaveh b'tzedakah, and its repatriates, those who are imprisoned, shall be redeemed through tzedakah. There's another verse that says in Tehillim, Psalms, Tzedek lefanav yihalech. Tzedek shall go before him, before God. Tzedek can mean here righteousness, can also mean tzedakah, charity. Now, for those who are familiar with Hebrew language, so the word is, it says here in King David's Psalms, Yahalech, which seemingly it should say Yelech, it shall go, the charity or the righteousness shall go before God. But it says Yahalech, meaning it's causing something else to go before God. Of course, what is that? What is causing, what is in our righteousness or in our charity causing something to go before God? We'll understand this by understanding another verse in Tehillim, in Psalms, that says, L'cha amar libi bakshapanai, in your behalf, my heart says, seek God's face, my face, God's face. So my heart, seeking God's face, meaning his inwardness, meaning that a person should seek the inwardness of their own heart in order to be able to connect with the inwardness of God. So let's understand what all of this means, right? These various verses, concepts over here, and this will be understood by understanding the fact that in our heart there are many layers, many layers. We've spoken about this idea before. That's why tshuva, parenthetically, the Alter Rebbe is not saying this here, but parenthetically elsewhere where we learned in a previous letter, yes, that it was not in previous letters, it was in Igeres Tshuva, that you can have our sins constantly before us. Why? Because in our heart there are many layers of what it means doing tshuva, penitence, and coming closer to God. So you can deal with things and yet deal more deeply with things to become closer to God. That's what we said then. Now we're going to speak about two dimensions of our heart, external and internal. External is not a bad thing because we call it external. External versus internal means that external means there's it's a means to an end. There's something that you do to get there, to touch that part of the heart. Internal means that it's something so deep and profound, it's there. It just has to, come out. It has to be released, so to speak. So what's the external? The external is that when we think, we meditate in a profound manner about the greatness of God, our relationship with God, God's realness in my life and the world around me, then that will bring me to a love of God. That's external. Why is it external? Because it's intelligence it's bringing is arousing the heart. It's not the heart arousing itself, so to speak. It's not inherent to the heart. It's something that needs to be brought upon the heart, my mind, my bina, my understanding of the greatness of God. That will allow me to access my heart, and that I should have a feeling towards God. Parenthetically, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this, but in anything in life, when we think about it, meditate upon it, whether it's a relationship, whatever it might be, will bring feelings to the heart. Therefore, meditate upon, positive, good things. Of course, when you're angry at somebody and then you just think about their negative, something negative about them, then that just brings more negative feelings in our heart, and our heart becomes, the guy who was needed some charity, so he was going to this wealthy individual, and was a little unsure of himself and a little knows that this person's not the great, is capable of giving, not the greatest giver. And as he's walking up, he's thinking about, this guy, he's probably not going to give me, and he probably has, 1,000 reasons why he can't give me. And, he gave me last month, and, he goes through the 1,000 things in a moment in his head of the reasons why he won't give me. And by the time he opens up the door, he knocks on the door and opens up the door, the rich man, he says, you keep your money, I don't need it, and walks away. In other words, what did he do? With his mind, he, aroused his heart with such, negative forces that, of course, he expressed himself in such a way. Okay, then, that is on the negative side. We're just showing the point that our minds do feed our hearts. Let us meditate upon, the Alter Rebbe is saying, with the greatness of God, God in our lives, our relationship with God. And that will bring to a love of God. It'll give birth to a strong love of God, of flashes of fire, as the Alter Rebbe says. Then there's a deeper, more profound. It's the pnimius halev, the inwardness of the heart, the depth of the heart that transcends intelligence. That's the key over here. It's not based on my understanding. It's not my understanding feeding my heart. It is something that is inherently there, that my meditation isn't getting me there. And it's the depth of my heart. Now, the Alter Rebbe gives a metaphor for what it means touching the depth of a person that is not logic. That's the key over here. That it's not based on reason. So when you have something in your life that in your heart is really important, let's say your business, your livelihood, for some people their livelihood, it's so important. Another, meaning a relationship, a spouse, a child, really important. I'm not, I'm not here to say, I'm not here to bring out what's important, what's not important. That's not the issue over here. But something that is important beyond logic in your heart. And for some people, their business or their livelihood can be, right? In others, it touches the very core being that transcends any logic and reason. When something will happen to that, you are unhinged. You are touched in your innermost, that you say things that are without reason. You walk around in a daze. You talk irrationally. Why? Because something has been touched in your life that is beyond rationale, supra-rational, and therefore you're touched and pained by this. You're going to speak in an irrational way. That's on the negative side, Zeluazel, and corresponding on a good side, on the healthy side, is we have that part in our soul, in our heart, the Pnimius Alev, that when we serve God, we can touch that. It's not Bina, which is understanding, but it's Chachma, and even beyond Chachma. Chachma is the Nekuda, is a seminal point that is found within our soul. When we touch that, that is beyond rationale. Even though Chachma, by the way, is intelligence, right? We translate it as wisdom, not a good translation. And Bina, understanding. So in Bina, that's rationality, that's reason. Chachma is the source of reason, but it's beyond it, it transcends it. And in Chachma, different layers of it, different levels of it. The Yud of Hashem's name is Chachma, as we've learned before. The letter Yud is Chachma. Hey is Bina. See, that's expansive, because its reason is expanding the seminal point. The seminal point, ultimately, the source of it is beyond logic. This is what defines who we are as Jews. That Chachma of the soul. Actually, at this point, the Alter Rebbe, that's the end of today's class. Tomorrow we'll continue on what that innermost part of the heart that is reflected by Chachma and beyond Chachma, what that means in love, what that means in the heart, the innermost part of the heart. We'll continue with that thought. But we've learned this idea already previously. The Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it here, but I'll mention it in chapter 19 of the first part of Tanya. And the inwardness of the love of God is not one that is created as the outwardness is, right, by the understanding of the greatness of God and our relationship with God, as we mentioned previously. But this one is something that is there, beyond logic, actually is the definition of who we are in our soul as a Jew. And as the Alter Rebbe explains, that this Chachma that is laden in the inner dimension of our heart, that defines our very soul of who we are as Jews, leads us, when we touch that inwardness, again, where we're going in this letter is going to be in a different manner, all right? But where it leads us is that we're ready to give up our lives for the very fact that we're Jews. Today is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, the day of destruction of two holy temples. The Jews remained steadfast even in destruction and being annihilated, thereafter from the last 2,000 years, giving up our lives. Why do we give up our lives? We give it up because it made sense. Some people give up their lives for something because, a life that you wouldn't die for something is not a life necessarily worth living. If you won't die for something, then what are you going to live for? You have to have something so important in your life that you're ready to die for. Then you can really live. Well, we Jews have something that's worth dying for, and that's our Judaism. And Jews have done that. Whether it's at the cross, whether it's against even our will in the Holocaust. But we have given up our lives, not because it made sense, not because I lived my life for something that, logically made sense, and therefore logically I will give up my life. For example, if you really believe strongly in something, maybe that will cause you to give up your life for it because you believe strongly in something. It's not because we believe strongly. Because many Jews didn't live a Jewish life, and yet when it came to a time of martyrdom, they gave up their lives. That's not logic. That's beyond logic. And that is the inward part of the heart that is beyond reason and transcendent of it, that Jews have been able to touch, or we have revealed, even though we didn't live with that inwardness, yet when it came to a moment of martyrdom, it expressed itself, because that's the deeper true reality of the soul, expressed in the deeper part of the heart, the inward part of the heart, that transcends logic. So Jews didn't make a calculation. You know what? I'm going to get the Garden of Eden if I give up my life. Oh, this is better than living. We Jews don't make that calculation. Other faiths do, but we don't. You know, if I don't give up my life, I'm going to lose my world in the world to come. No. It's better time in this world than in, than the world to come. So it is supra-rational. It is a piece of God that's in us that reveals it at such a time. Where we're going in this letter is, is there a way that that's expressed otherwise? This inward part of the heart? Do we have some kind of access to it? Aside from giving up your life? That's where we're going to go with this, God willing. Stay tuned for more. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have whoever still is in the midst of Tisha B'Av, have a meaningful Tisha B'Av, a easy rest of the fast, if you're still fasting. And most importantly, this day should be transformed into a day of true joy of Mashiach now.